right, everybody, welcome back to another guest episode of Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast. My guest today is Julia Christine, and I'm giggling at the beginning of this because we had a little bit of a snafu of whose Zoom were you really on? And it kind of took me in the time capsule of like, what place and time are you really? Whose Zoom are you really on? So Julia is really on my Zoom, and we're really doing a guest interview, and we're going to talk about a lot of things. She has a beautiful podcast where she shares breathing techniques for centering, grounding, relaxation, and also talks about all the things. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Julia. I'm going to let her do her own intro. And then, of course, as usual, we're going to do this unstructured, like, let's just talk and see what comes out. So, here we go. Hi.
Hey, hi. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. I just adore you, so I'm really excited to have a
Oh,
conversation. I'm Julia Christine, and as you mentioned, I am the host of the Life After Breath podcast. I believe very strongly that in order to obtain complete wellness in your life, which for me means physical health and wellness, as well as spiritual, mental, sexual, financial health, like and wellness, that all comes through an awareness. And I believe the best gateway to that kind of awareness, to any kind of awareness, is through our breath. And so that's why we meet every morning for 3 to 5 minutes just to take some time to breathe and get centered and connect to ourselves and be more aware of how we're moving so that then we can be more aware of the world around us.
I love
Something I'm
it.
super passionate about.
I love it,
Yeah,
and
me
I'm
too.
super excited, and I'm so grateful that you have created this podcast because I get caught up in a lot of doing. Like I have a very, very full day most days,
Right.
up at 4:30 in the morning, chore time in the barn,
Mm,
off to the 14-hour day job, the reverse of the chore time when I get home, and then of course podcasting and working on building a business. So there are very
right.
little tiny windows where I can actually sit and breathe, even though we do it,
Yeah.
autonomically we breathe, but we don't really breathe. We shallow breathe,
Right.
but we don't really breathe. We don't really center. We don't really ground. And
Right.
so, like many people, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this morning practice. And then I don't. And then
Right.
I don't feel great. And so I'm really, really grateful to your daily breath practice. It's short, it's sweet, but it keeps me on task. So you're sort of like my
Yeah.
accountability partner, which I love.
Good.
So thank you.
I love that too. Thank
Yeah,
you. I
it
love it. And you're
matters.
right. It does. And I'll be honest, I don't do it every day. And I'm telling everybody to do it every day. You know what I mean? Like, but we're human. And so we fall out of those practices and we get caught up in like you said, in the busy and in the everyday. And so, and then when you start to be like, ugh, I feel awful, it's like, oh, well, you didn't take the time to breathe this morning. You know? And so you can stop in the middle of the day on the toilet. Just take some deep breaths. Like seriously, there is time in the day. And then if what I challenge like my clients with is that if you don't have 3 minutes for yourself, we need to talk. You know what I mean? Like you can
Yes.
take you deserve 3 minutes at the very least, 3 minutes. And so that is my intention is to keep it short and simple and sweet because that's the beginning. Let's get into that habit of 3 minutes a day. And then we can expand that to five. I do seven, sometimes 10. Do you know what I mean? Like it depends on your day, what you got going on,
Right.
how much time, and kind of what you need and start once you get into that practice, you can kind of listen to your body and to how you're feeling of like, okay, I'm going to get up now. Or I need this a little bit longer. Let's just sit here in the quiet for just a second more.
Yeah, I
It's
love
important.
that you say this. The piece of the awareness I feel is a whole lot easier to hear, to feel, to see when
Hmm.
you're in that more grounded, rested place of your nervous system, which comes secondary to could you breathe? I would love to talk a little more about that. And the other thing that I
Hmm.
really also would like to talk about is your intake. Listen to me. Your intake, as an intake of breath. No, your take on. Oh my goodness. Uh, how getting our breathing established and true and regulated and really breathing versus hyperventilating, which many of us do, is
Right.
that's I kind of view
Right.
shallow breathing like you're hyperventilating really, but how that really impacts your emotional well-being.
Mm.
So, Uh, those are the two things is first of all, give me your take on how slowing everything down, taking those few moments, centering, really working on your breath, and how do you feel that plays into your capacity to open yourself for the awarenesses of what's going on?
Sure. So we talk about like, first, let me just say that like breath work has been scientifically proven to change your body physiologically. And so there are a lot of medical approaches to breathing. I am not that person. So, little disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. I'm, you know what I mean? Like, I am not necessarily a breathwork practitioner. I use breath to connect to myself. And so that's what we're talking about. But so I'm not going to tell you to like start doing like what is called fire breath, where you're like breathing in and out, or like the Wim Hof method of like holding your breath for as long as possible till you think you're going to pass out. Talk to your doctor about some of that stuff, because some of that stuff can have an effect on your heart and things like that. So, but that's not what we're talking about. But just a little disclaimer out there that like breath work is powerful for your body. But my intention and how I have, I'm going to say, harnessed breathing to help me connect to myself and to help me through my day and to center that day is literally, and we say like we need to work on our breath. Well, like you said before, we breathe without thinking. It's a natural thing. What do we have to work on it? Let go of the idea that you can't do this. People talk about, I can't meditate, my mind won't stop wandering. Well, good, because your brain is supposed to be thinking. That's what its job is. So that means you're alive. So we're glad about that. And so, but what it is about taking control of those thoughts, reminding yourself, thank you so much for that thought. I'm going to focus on this right now. And that's what it is. It's focus. You sit with your feet planted, you sit in whatever position you want to sit. Sometimes people lay down. I struggle to lay down because I'll fall asleep. And I don't want to start my morning going back to sleep and then being late, because that's not going to help. So I get myself up and I sit down. And by taking those deep breaths, and it literally, if you take 2 to 3 breaths, like deep breaths, there's just a calm that comes over you, like unintentionally. You don't have to think about it. You have to work on it. That's what happens. Just taking 2 deep breaths. And so that right there, is helpful when you're running around trying to find your keys and you're late and you're this and you're that. If you stop, which you don't think you can because you're late and you can't find your keys, and take a few deep breaths and allow that calm, you will find your keys, guaranteed, because you've allowed yourself to center and give yourself this much space between you and whatever is going on to be able to confront or approach a problem or whatever that is. So that's like midday running around that frantic energy. But in the morning, excuse me, what I do is just take those few deep breaths, find that sense of ease. And then when you start to just breathe, like focus on your breathing. What does it feel like? Have you ever thought about what it feels like to breathe? Is the air colder or warmer as it comes into your nostrils or as it exits? Is it how's your body moving? Do your shoulders move when you breathe? Is it just your lungs? Are you using your stomach and your diaphragm? Cool. Have you ever thought about what it feels like that the gravity is pulling you into your chair? Like silly, non-important things that like you don't think about. Let's focus on those. That's what working on your breath for me is it's becoming aware of what is happening when I breathe. Now, because I'm focusing on the in and the out, I'm not thinking about what my day looks like. I'm not thinking about my to-do list. I'm not thinking about what so-and-so said to me yesterday. I'm not thinking about any of the stress. I'm not thinking about my finances. I'm not thinking about how I hate my job or any of that, because I'm thinking about my lungs are expanding and now they're contracting. And so it puts you in the present moment. And when you are in the present moment, there's no anxiety, there's no depression, there's no fear. You're right there in that moment. And that is what it's about. Now, behind the scenes, you are connecting to your inner being. Behind the scenes, you are practicing awareness because you're honing in that skill of what is happening when I'm breathing, what is happening in this moment. And so that's why by it becoming a practice in a few days, you're going to take that with you. You're going to feel great because you're in a calm space, but then you're also going to start to notice things around you. You're going to become more aware of the world around you. Oh my God, that tree is beautiful. I've lived here for 10 years and I've never seen that tree. Wow, it's gorgeous. And you're going to start to notice things. And for me, what that is, that's gratitude. The sky is beautiful. That's the same as saying, thank you for the sky. And so now we're putting out unintentionally gratitude and positivity. And that all is extension from sitting down for 3 minutes a day and paying attention to how my lungs work.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's true. And then all of a sudden you start to notice other things. Somebody cuts you off and you curse them out. And then you're like, wait, isn't it really that big of a deal? Like, and like you start to question, you start to hear yourself say, I'm the worst. And you're like, am I? Like, or like, I'm so lazy. No, I'm not lazy. I'm just tired. I just don't want to do that right now, or whatever it is. And so then we start being more able to be aware of how we're talking to ourselves, how we're talking to each other, how we are reacting instead of responding to a situation. And so like if you feel you when you start to get in touch with what it feels like to breathe, you're starting to get in touch with and in tune with your body. I remember when I first started working on trying to make sure that I was responding instead of reacting. I was still working my full-time job and I would get an email and I'd get furious right away. And I would start writing an email back and like, no, that's not what we said, blah, 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 you know what I mean? And being aggressive in my email. And I read that when you start to react, your body reacts first. And so like for some people, your heart beats faster. For some people, you get like a tightness in your throat or your stomach hurts or you start sweating or like your body has a different reaction to different emotions. So when you get angry, your body does something. I was so out of touch with myself and with my body that I was like, that's not true. I just get mad. And actually, it is true. My heart races like crazy. I can like my whole body tenses up when I'm starting to react. And so I feel that and it's like a little light bulb. You're reacting to something, what's going on? And so then take a deep breath. When you feel that, take a deep breath. When somebody's confronting you, take a deep breath and just give yourself 10 seconds to again put that little bit of space between you and whatever's going on so that you can look at it objectively and make a conscious choice about how you want to respond instead of just allowing yourself to react to whatever it feels like is going on. Because 9 times out of 10, that's not really what's going on.
I think that's a
Does
good
that make
point
sense?
to bring up is oftentimes that immediate reaction versus taking time to consider what the response would be is what is the word of everybody's language today. I'm triggered. I'm triggered. I'm triggered. You
Yeah.
hear this everywhere. Oh, I
Yeah.
feel so triggered. Well, if we take that sentence, which actually has validity but has now sort of been overused, and
Okay.
really take it apart, it is quite accurate that there's some event, whether it's an email, a conversation, getting cut off in traffic, that brings up a feeling that you once had at some other time and place in your lifetime that was
Hmm.
associated with a particular emotion, whether that's fear or disappointment or judgment or
Insecurity.
whatever the insecurity, whatever
Yeah.
the thing may or may not be, so that your body somatically has held all of that information in the cells and now
Hmm.
it comes to the surface very rapidly, not necessarily because that's really what you're feeling in the moment, but whatever the event was brought back or triggered or stimulated
Hmm.
that memory of something that had occurred previously.
Right.
So taking that breath really is like it feels to me it's like a disruptor. It's like instead of
Yes.
just going, 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 you're saying, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's
Right.
stop for a second and decide, is this for real or is this not for real?"
Right.
And so the two phrases
Absolutely.
of objectivity and taking the time to respond versus react, I think are really important.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think the other thing, what I tell my clients a lot of times is like, if you're in the middle of a meeting and your boss is yelling at you, or you're being, like you say, triggered by something and that's being said because it's inaccurate information or whatever it is, you can't exactly close your eyes and take 2 or 3 deep breaths. You know what I mean? Like that's not necessarily appropriate in a professional meeting. However, you can carry a bottle of water with you everywhere. Nobody is going to blink if you take a second to open your bottle of water and take a couple of swigs and then, you know what I mean? That time, that's it. Take that
Yeah.
time. The interrupter that you're the disruptor that you said, that is going to I would still say breathe, but you breathe when you drink water, whether you realize it or not. Like have something that's going to separate you. I actually had a client, which I'm so proud of her when she told me she did this, she said, hang on just a second, I'm reacting. Let me process this. And she took a couple of breaths and then was able to continue. And her boss was like, what did you just do? And she was like, I was just reacting and I don't want to. I want to analyze what you're saying and be able to respond appropriately. And her boss was like, that was amazing because it actually, both of them were getting heightened. And it took
Yes.
both of them down to a level playing field of like, let's actually be productive in this meeting. Because when you're heightened like that, there's no productivity. And
No.
so it's crazy. It's not crazy, but it's fascinating that something as simple as breathing totally puts you back in that space, calms everybody in the room down. And
Absolutely.
it's something like you say that we take for granted. It's what we do every day. Like breathe because your life depends on it. But really, let's analyze that sentence because it's true. It's so true. And to get a little woo woo, I totally believe that that sense of calm and that sense of ease that we talked about early on that happens when you take a couple of deep breaths. I believe very strongly that that is you, physical you, linking hands, arms with internal soul piece of, spirit you, that your inner being, your inner soul, your inner source. And that's why it feels so good. That's why there's this calm because your inner being is delighted by you and is delighted with everything and doesn't experience negative emotion. And so when you take those few breaths, you're right there with them. And then you can move forward and you can move forward. And so that's like when we talk about getting grounded, sometimes I feel like there's this big process around it. And I actually, this crazy because I literally thought this in my meditation this morning of like, okay, I want to do like a golden light grounding. And then it was like, no, you don't have time to do this big old thing. Like just take a couple of breaths. We're right here. And it was like you get to choose because sometimes that's amazing and it feels really good to go through this whole process of filling your body with golden light or imagining your feet going down into the ground like roots and wrapping around the earth and like it feels really good. Like I've got goosebumps talking about it. Sometimes you don't have that kind of time and that's okay. And I think that's why 3 minutes is so important to me because it's like, do it, do something. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes of like kumbaya, like like it doesn't have to be that. Just connect, just find yourself. And you know about my whole big transformational story, but like I came from a place of like such disconnect. And I really truly feel like that's why I didn't think my life was worth living is because I didn't connect. I had no connection to that inner being. I had no connection to the source within me. And once I found that, not only am I so much more aware of who I am, I'm so much more aware of what I want my life to be, what I want to eat for frickin' breakfast. I wouldn't have been able to tell you 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But now, because I'm connected to who I am, I can answer those silly questions of what do you want?
Yeah. It's huge. It's really huge. And I think there's a piece of us as humans that we know this, like, duh, on one side of our being, but yet the other side of our being, the ego side of our being that is so busy, 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 the mind chatter, all of it, tries to wrap these stories about you don't have time to meditate, you don't have time to breathe, you don't have time to whatever. This is taking a higher priority. You have to go do XYZ. So the reminders are 3 minutes is not forever. We waste 3 minutes in everything, scrolling your phone or changing your
Right.
radio stations or you name it. 3 minutes goes by pretty darn quickly, actually.
Right.
So I think anybody truly could find 3 minutes. So that's my first
Absolutely.
observation, including myself. The other awareness is when you're like, I don't have time, why not take a moment to say, okay, let's be real. Is that real? Or are you telling yourself this because, and there's a story behind this story. So I think
Yeah.
that's
What's
kind
my
of
resistance
important
to
as
this?
well. I'm going to share two quick stories with you, and I'd love your take on this. So, one story is
Okay.
This is about grounding and centering and learning to
Mhm.
kind of come back to yourself. I'll give you 3 actually. So one is from a guest episode that's gonna be released shortly with a gal
Mhm.
who she also had a transformational journey, and part of her journey, she had been a chronic smoker for many, many years. And
Mhm.
when she
Mhm.
started her meditation program or her self-centering program and did breath work, that was a big piece for her. She
Mhm.
literally stopped having the desire to smoke because the
Mhm.
smoking was pushing down a deep grief that she had been experiencing. And when she
Yes.
learned to expand her lung space, the grief that she had been holding in her lung space moved out as she was breathing because she was expanding and opening and centering and grounding through her breath work. And she literally, after I think she was a 20-year smoker, boom, not like I had to struggle and quit and go through a quit program, by
Yeah.
dealing with the emotional drive behind the smoking
Mhm.
and working through that with the breath work, excuse me,
Mhm.
she no longer had that need, desire, want, and
Right.
a story, no longer a smoker. So the 2 pieces that I think resonated with me when she told me this story was, 1, how amazing that you can literally help yourself cure yourself of addictive patterns by
Mhm.
getting more in touch with your deepest sense of who you are, facilitated
Mhm.
through things like good breathing. 2, expanding your lung capacity to do what it was built to do. If we were supposed to shallow breathe, our lungs would be like the size of a walnut, but they're not because we're
Right.
supposed to fill them up with
Right.
air. So, there is that piece. So I think that's important. So that's what I took from her story, is to her working through her grief that was being
Right.
stored in her lung space that she was squelching
Mhm.
down with smoking, was
Yeah.
resolved by her learning to
Right.
center and become more tuned into who she really was. Story 2 for people who are like, "Well, I can't do that." Okay, so I ride
That's big.
horses, I have horses, and the
Mhm.
one thing that we have been told and taught over and over and over and over is that when things are going a little crazy haywire on a ride, is to center yourself and deeply breathe, because that communication from you to your horse helps to bring the energy to a
Mhm.
softer, quieter, easeful place. So that is just an example of, if the answer to getting out of, the rodeo event is breathe, well, gee whiz, maybe the answer to getting out of life's rodeo event might be to start
Yep.
breathing. So that's really pretty key. And then the last story I'll share with you, 2 stories. It was one in a major Hollywood motion picture, if anybody recalls the movie Pretty Woman, where Julia
Mhm.
Roberts takes her fancy man there out and says, "Take your socks off and walk on the grass." And he's never done this before. And she tells him to do this. Why? Because it connects to the earth and it helps to ground, and it takes you down a notch so you can
Mhm.
actually enjoy the moment. So I thought, when I saw that movie, I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, that's the ticket right there." And, it doesn't hurt that it was a fun movie and eye candy to boot, but anyway. And the last piece I'll tell you is, I remember this so clearly. My younger sister and I were in the ICU room. My brother was dying, and we were in the ICU room together, and we literally spent 24/7 in that room for a window of time. Like,
Right.
we just took turns going to, who went to the bathroom or who went to get coffee. And we had a little window where he was in a restful position where we didn't need to physically be in the room at that very moment. And she
Mhm.
said, "I have got to go outside and put my feet on dirt, like on the grass."
Mhm.
Granted, we're in a hospital parking lot. There's not much grass, but we
Right.
found it. We found a place for her, and I watched her take off her shoes, and she literally stood and just closed her eyes, did some deep breathing with her feet on the ground in the grass, and her whole demeanor, like, literally, I watched
Yeah.
her come down a few notches. So there are real life things that go on that you innately as a human understand. If I can slow down and I can take a deep breath, I can feel better. And it's
Mhm.
really our mind that tries to trick us and say, "You don't have time for that. Oh, you can't do that." And so to
Yeah.
teach a quick 3-minute practice, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You
that could be
absolutely do.
your reroute.
Totally.
Hmm.
Totally. I live in New York City, so getting outside and putting my feet in the grass is challenging. Now, having said that, I live on a parkway where there's like a service road, so there's like benches and grass right in front of my building. But that's where all the dogs use the restroom. And da, da, da. I don't really want to take my shoes off and walk around barefoot in there. But what I do is I'm a big fan of trees. Like a lot of my methodology extends from trees. When I ground myself, I visualize myself in a tree, like that kind of thing. And so I will just either put my hand up against a tree and take some deep breaths, or sometimes I will either sit on the roots or I'll lean against it and like hold on to it, whatever it is, so that I am in touch with nature in some sense of the word and really breathe. And if you can't come in contact with some sort of nature, whether that's feet in the ground or holding onto a tree or whatever that is, cool, get outside. If you are feeling overwhelmed, stressed, emotional, I don't know why I'm crying. I keep crying. First of all, keep crying. It's cool. Crying is good. We've criminalized crying and it's ridiculous. Cry and cry and cry because that's healing actually. But go outside. Take a few breaths outside. It We are supposed to be outside so much more than we are. And that's a society thing. Even the idea of go, go, go. I don't have time. I can't. I'm going to be late. I'm going to, I have to go, 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 go. I don't have those 3 minutes. That is such a our society thing. And so like one of my big things is I want to break down these societal like norms and like the things that these structures that have been put into place. And I want to encourage people to get curious. And sometimes those things are for you. Sometimes working a 9 to 5 brings you joy. Fantastic. We need people like you, or our country will fall apart. But that's not for everybody. And just because we've been told that that's what you're supposed to do, that's what everybody, quote unquote, feels like they need to do. That might not be for you, and that's okay. And it's fantastic if it is. Regardless, I'm going off on the track. Start to get
We're made to
curious.
move.
I don't
We're
have
made to
time.
move. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And being outside is so super important. Be outside in the nighttime, be outside in the daytime. Go look at the moon. When was the last time you went and stared at the stars? Just for 2 minutes. And again, if you don't have time to do that, question that. Get curious, not in a judgmental way. I am so not a judgment person. Guilt is, guilt is, you've ever seen the movie, I'm dating myself, that never ending story?
Hmm.
There's this scene where like he takes his horse through like the swamp of despair or something. And if you have to keep moving and you can't let the despair overwhelm you or you're going to sink into the swamp, blah, blah, blah. That's what guilt is. That is
Yeah.
absolutely what guilt is. It's the swamp of despair. You cannot get anywhere from a place of guilt. So there's absolutely no judgment in asking yourself. It's not, why can't you find time? It's, what am I doing with my life that I can't afford 3 minutes for myself? Hmm, maybe I need to relook at how I'm prioritizing everyone else over myself. Huh, maybe there's something to put your oxygen mask on before you help the people around you.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that I can do in a daily practice of breathing and getting that oxygen through my body every day before I
Yes.
move out into the world and help all the people around me. Maybe there's something to that. Get curious.
Yeah.
Hmm. And you know
It's a
what? The other thing
really
is,
good place to start. Yeah.
yeah, and not, why can't I? I love doing this. Huh. I
Huh.
think it's lighthearted. It's not judgmental. It's, huh, that's a block for me. I wonder what's behind that. Where is that coming from? Huh. Interesting. I should look into that. There's no judgment there. And the other thing I will say is that, like, breath is my gateway to this kind of awareness. Breath is my connection. And I do believe that it is vitally important, but it might not be what floats your boat. You're going to probably end up doing it anyway. But let's pretend that yoga is your thing. Oh my gosh, when I do my yoga, I am so centered. You're also breathing, but I'm not going to tell you that. You know what I mean? Whatever works. I have a friend who, like, she, like, dancing, like if she's in a place where she needs to, like, get connected to herself, she throws on some music and shakes her butt. Amazing. And that's instant connection to her inner being for her. And so find what works for you and then follow that. Follow what works for you. Just make sure to take that time for you because it is vitally important. People walk around saying, I had a friend tell me the other day, life doesn't suck, but life is really lifing right now. And I get that, but I want to just pause for a second. Life is yours. So if life sucks, that's you. You get to control that. If life is lifing, that's you. What does that mean? What are
Right.
you doing? I'm not saying that the world is beautiful, but that's not life. My life is beautiful in a world that is rocky, you know? But life is yours. What are you doing with it?
It's a
Don't
really
blame
valid
life for
point.
your hardships.
Yeah.
That's you, you know? And that's hard to hear and hard to stomach. But when you can take that 50,000 view and go, huh, there's something to that. What can I be doing differently so that it doesn't feel like my life sucks? And take a small step towards feeling a little bit better. Just small, 3 minutes,
I think it's
8
a
ounces of
perfect,
water.
beautiful place to start, and I think to create something small that starts with that, and I think what it also says is that you are giving yourself permission to prioritize yourself so that your lifing becomes something of your own design versus a reaction to somebody else's design.
100%. Or a reaction to fitting into the societal based structures that are in place for us to fit into.
Right. Which we can
Yeah,
choose
for
to
sure.
fit in or not fit in. And if you
Yep.
don't, so what? I mean, that's the
Right.
most beautiful place, and the most
Right.
beautiful things happen when you step outside of the quote unquote norm.
Right. And that's
So,
uncomfortable. But
sure.
see, this is my friend Shannon says this all the time. Like, that's where it begins. If you're feeling uncomfortable, go that way. Oh, this
Yes.
is uncomfortable. Right. What's on the other side of that? Because usually what's on the other side of discomfort is growth. So
Yes.
much growth.
Yep.
So, and it's beautiful and exciting. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And just to go back just a little bit to your first story about like you're right. I completely agree. I mean, I believe that finding your friend finding that her lungs expanding and like you can heal your life. There's a Louise Hay book that I highly recommend. You can heal your life. It literally changed my life reading that book. And she introduced me to this idea that when you work on your body, you're also working on your mind and your spirit, whether you like it or not, and it's works the other way as well. If she's working on her breath work, then that means she's working on her mind and her spirit. Her body is going to heal as a result of it. And
Absolutely.
so that I believe so strongly that those three things are interconnected more than we have any concept. And so it is inevitable that if you are looking for any kind of true change, something is going to shift in all three of those arenas, period. And
Absolutely.
so, um, and then, and so then those addictions that we run to hide something else. That's what the addictions are.
Hmm.
It's not about the drug or the alcohol or the cigarette or the whatever. Sure, those all have addictive qualities. However, that's not what your going to them for is about. You're running to those things because you're running from something else. So the fact that she like did that work, it makes total sense to me that she didn't have to go through like a process or anything. It was that she made that shift and she faced what she was running from. And so
Yeah.
she didn't need it anymore. And
So
our
I, l-
bodies
I,
are that powerful.
the body is that powerful. And what I also want to say as we kind of wrap things up is I believe our spirit and our essence of who we really are at our core, our heart is that powerful. So people
Absolutely.
oftentimes feel not only do I not have 3 minutes, but we do. They may say, what difference will this make? It will. Certainly, growth comes at the edge of discomfort for sure. But the other thing I
Hmm.
just want to kind of say is my opinion is you don't have to spend your whole life, quote unquote, fixing and healing. It can
Mm.
be as simple as, oh, I learned how to breathe. Hello. And all these other things started to fall into place. It's almost like you
Hmm.
shift one piece of the mechanism and all the other
Yep.
pieces
Yep.
start to fall into place. And it can be a
Hmm.
fairly quick shift and change. So for listeners out there, if you think like, oh my gosh, I'm 85 and I can't make a shift and change, well, BS on that, you sure can.
Right.
Because
Absolutely. You're still
quote
breathing.
unquote
You're still
healing
alive.
transforming doesn't need to take a multiple decades.
Right. Not at
So
all. The
not at
thing
all.
that I really want to hone in on is that you don't need fixing. You are not broken.
Correct.
It's not about
Yes.
fixing. No, you are beautiful and perfect. Love yourself right where you are. And if you can love yourself where you are and then move forward in growth, amazing. And so that's where I want to encourage people to be, is that you don't have to lose the weight before you love yourself. You don't have to prove anything to anybody before you love yourself. You can love yourself right where you are and then continue to grow. And it's funny because I told you that trees are a big deal, and I have my whole like coaching methodology is like a tree, like I'm a bee at trees. And so I was thinking, I wish that there was a like some sort of metaphor I could come up with about taking baby steps. You don't have 3 minutes. Great. What are you doing while you're in the toilet? Everybody uses the toilet. What are you
Right.
doing when you're at a stoplight? You're gonna be at a stoplight. Take a couple of breaths. That's all it
Right.
is. Find the time within your busy. Literally, you don't have to like carve out time. Just find it within. Start there. And you know what? Trust us that you will see a difference. It's going to take a little bit of time, but you will start seeing a little bit of difference. And all of a sudden, you're going to maybe want to carve out some of that time. But right now, cool, no pressure, no worries. Do a little bit at a time. And just like, so this is my metaphor about the tree, growth happens. Because I thought, okay, well, first you have to plant the seed. And it was like, no, that's not what you do first. And I'm not a gardener. Like, I love trees and everything, and I love nature, but I can't keep a plant alive to save my life. But that's not how you start. You first, like, is it tilling the ground? You
Right.
first
You prep the
enrich the
ground.
soil. You
Correct.
water the soil. You nourish the soil.
Correct.
And then you plant the seed. And then
Correct.
guess what? It does the growth on its own. Growth and healing happens when you nourish yourself,
Yes.
when you nourish the soil, when you water the soil, when you pour loving energy into whatever's growing. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Allow the growth to happen. Growth happens. There's no fixing that. You don't have to
I
fix a
just love
seed
that
to
you
make it grow.
reiterate because this is absolutely one of my philosophies. Fixing implies that something is busted or broken.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that as we all come here from the divine and we are all made of love and we are a spark of that source, I don't feel that we are quote unquote broken. We may feel broken when our lives that we have created don't
Right.
look the way we think they need to look. But if you look behind the phrase of "I feel broken," there's really something behind that, which is I feel
Right.
unseen, I feel unheard, I feel unloved, I
Unsafe.
feel fear, I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel safe, I feel. So the phrase broken really isn't quite accurate. So to me, nobody's
Right.
broken. So therefore, if you're not broken, you don't really need to be fixed. However, I do feel, which is the whole point of the podcast here, by removing the barriers that are covering up the presence of love, which is a piece of who you are. It is who you
Mm-hmm.
are. By simply addressing and removing those barriers, many of which we have created our own by our
Mm-hmm.
choices, then what has already been there, what has always been there, what will continue to always be there is much more readily available to be of
Mm-hmm.
use and service to you. So you're not really
Yeah.
fixing anything. So
No.
I love that you bring
No.
that up.
Yeah. And all
Yeah.
those barriers are put into place because we're trying to protect ourselves.
Mm,
So one of the things that like I have a friend and sometimes client who like she was actually the one who told me that she was running around frenetically trying to find her keys and stopped and took a couple of breaths and repeated a mantra that I had informed her would be very helpful for her life. And it's just, I am safe. And once she reminded herself that she was safe, it was like she immediately felt at peace. So when you're doing your breathing, remind yourself, I'm safe. Tell yourself, I'm listening so that you can connect to what you want. Tell yourself, we're safe. I'm totally safe. I'm okay. And that will help to not disintegrate, but to remove those barriers that are there to protect you, because that's
mhm.
all we've done as a little girl, as my inner child. All of the crazy protections that she put in place were just to protect us. And so I like to grab her and tell her, we're safe. We are okay.
Yeah.
We're okay.
Great reminder. Fabulous.
Yeah.
So I know you do on your podcast something called Our Daily Breath,
Mhm.
ODB.
ODB.
ODB. So let the listeners know again the name of the
Mhm.
podcast, as well as where can people find you if they would like more support in working with
Sure.
you. And I will put it
Absolutely.
in the show
So
notes.
Thank you. The podcast is Life After Breath. We do our daily breath every day. And then we do a little Talk It Out Tuesday where I tell more of my story and kind of like little epiphanies that I have throughout the week. And then every either Friday or Saturday, it hasn't gotten quite consistent enough yet. We go to the lab, Life After Breath, where we have conversations with people like yourself about their own journeys and see if the methodologies that different people use can be applied to expand our minds and stuff. I've learned so much. I absolutely love the conversations that I'm having. And it literally is just like this. It's just a conversation. We're just chatting and it's really fun. So that is on Life After Breath is on any podcast platforms that you use, Apple, Spotify, you name it. Julia Christine is Facebook and Julia Christine Health is on Instagram.
I love it. So good.
Thanks.
Follow Julia Christine on all the places because she's magical, 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 and absolutely jump in on that podcast. It's just a great way to get yourself started for the day. It's quick, it's easy, it's fun, and you're just a joy to speak with. I just so
Thank you.
appreciate you
You
taking
too.
the time. It's been an absolute pleasure,
Absolutely.
and I can't wait to put this
Yay.
out there. Yay!
Hooray, me too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.